I don't know if you guys can see it at all, but there's just a bunch of mushrooms growing on my campus. Oh my god, here's an even bigger one. I read Mexican Gothic. I know how this shit goes. Hola mi gente and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do my September wrap up, and before I start I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So first off, I don't know if you noticed, but I did change it from Hola hermanos to Hola mi gente. I just feel like it suits me better. If you hear meowing, my cat is looking for attention because he's a big baby. The other thing I want to talk about is my Cemetery Boys reading vlog. I originally had filmed everything that I needed for a part 3 and even wrote and recorded my script for that. But due to an incident on my campus, I became very disillusioned with what I did. I felt like my footage was tainted and my enjoyment of the book not necessarily decreased, but I felt like I couldn't enjoy it, and I'll explain a little in a while. I genuinely considered rewriting, re-editing, and even refilming everything, but at the end of the day, I just really needed to take a break from that, and I decided that I won't be posting a part 3. This month wasn't a bad month for reading, but I didn't finish everything on my list. I know, shocker. I never not read everything on my list. So I read 9 books, and we will start from 2 stars to 5 stars. So our first book was Luster, and I read this in the last couple of days of September. I actually finished it on the 29th. But this book was a bit of a disappointment for me. The cover is absolutely gorgeous, and I really liked the premise. I thought it was very interesting, and it's something that I've only seen referenced in academic texts, which is how race affects BDSM and kink play. I wasn't necessarily looking for erotica, and I wasn't necessarily looking for this for sexual gratification. However, I was more interested in learning about the potential power imbalance placed on the main protagonist and her relationship, as she is a young Black woman and her partner is an older white man. So I wanted to see how an interracial relationship with a large age gap would affect their play. However, I got beautiful writing. I really enjoyed the writing, but the characters, in my opinion, were uninteresting, and I found the plot to be very circular. This isn't a bad book. It's definitely somebody else's cup of tea, but personally it was not mine. The writing, again, was phenomenal, and it felt a little experimental. I only say that because I haven't read anything like it before. Every paragraph was like a new story almost, and it read a lot like poem or even in verse. So I really enjoyed that. However, I wasn't very interested in Edie's relationship with Eric and his family. It just didn't do it for me. I was more interested in the build-up to Eric and Edie's relationship, but I lost interest as soon as their relationship started to solidify and we learned more about his family. So that one was a 2.7 out of 5 stars. Great writing, just overall not my thing. I would like to read Raven Leilani's work in the future because that writing was just beautiful. So we are now moving on to the 3-star reads, and so I have a few of the books here. Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth. This is a graphic novel starring the Cape Crusader as he is called to Arkham because the patients have taken over the asylum. This was a flat 3 for me. I like the art style. I thought the painted pages were very intriguing and reminded me a lot of like the Sandman comics, at least what I've seen from them. Those are on my list of future reads. And I could see a lot of the influences of this comic book, as it is considered a classic Batman comic, in the Arkham Asylum games, which I've played. However, the writing was just not it for me. I really do not know what it was. It just felt boring. It felt annoying almost, and this wasn't a very good Batman in my opinion. I didn't like the way he was portrayed. To me, the only good bits of writing were the bits we learned more about Amadeus Arkham, the founder of Arkham Asylum, everything that happened with his family, and the end when we get a good character moment with Two-Face where he flips the coin, determining whether or not Batman would live or die, and he decides to lie in order to save Batman's life. Everything felt rushed and incomplete, which from what I've seen from more recent reviews, that seems to be the general consensus, is that it's just not a particularly good comic at the very least. The big thing for me was that Joker's writing was, like, Joker's dialogue was very difficult to read, and not even in terms of content. I mean, like, physically almost impossible for me to read because it was scrawled. Yes, it was red lettering on a slight white background as opposed to being highly contrasted and easy to read. So it was not very accessible. The next book I read was And I Darken, which is a historical fiction / retelling of the myth of Vlad the Impaler. The story follows Lada and Radu, who are two siblings with a complicated relationship at best to downright toxic at worst. When their father attempts to renew an alliance with the Sultan, they are sent as wards, almost as pawns to ensure his alliance. Eventually, you learn how Lada and Radu make claims to power in their own ways and how that affects them later down the line. I gave this a 3.25 out of 5. I really liked the beginning of the book. I thought it was incredibly interesting. I liked learning about Lada and Radu's relationship and their interactions. Things began to slow down once they get to the Sultan's palace, and that's when it went from a 4-star to a 3-star for me. It just felt so slow, and my biggest complaint is that I felt like the book didn't know when to end. It just kept kind of going and going and going, and there was multiple points where I thought the book would end, and then I realized I had like 100 more pages. I also feel that Radu was more of a main character than I had anticipated. From the synopsis, it sounds more like Lada's going to be the main character, and she is. It's just that Radu has almost equal weight, at least towards the end of the story, which isn't a bad thing. I just feel like it's a little bit like false advertising. I will probably read the sequel, Now I Rise. The story didn't necessarily put me off. I do want to complete it. I hear it's a lot better, so I'm looking forward to that. I just probably won't read it anytime soon. The next 3-star read is Wilder Girls. This story takes place in an all-girls school on an island. There, the school is quarantined because suddenly the students and the teachers are becoming sick to the point where teachers are dropping dead and the students are starting to change. There is a mysterious illness called the Tox, which causes the girls to mutate, and each of them have very unique mutations. The story follows Hetty, Byatt, and Reese, and that's how I'm going to pronounce their names because I genuinely don't know how you pronounce their names. The story is told from the perspective of Hetty and Byatt, and after really starts to pick up once Byatt goes missing and Hetty makes it her sole mission to find her. This was a 3.5 out of 5 for me. One of my biggest complaints is that the characters talked like disparaged Victorian women, but I had to keep reminding myself that this took place in the modern era because it talked about like the CDC and cell phones. And I think later down the line you see a medical record and the birthdays are listed as like the birth years listed as like 2003. I like the different mutations given by the Tox or flare-ups. I thought they're very interesting. I like seeing how the girls were using them or attempting to use them in their advantage if they could. I thought there was a lot of good foreshadowing in terms of like how the Tox was transmitted or like the evolution of the Tox. However, the ending felt so rushed. It was just one thing after another with very little build-up and not a lot of follow-through. One of my other complaints is that Byatt seemed to not be a main character more than just a plot device. She's given a few characteristics and traits that kind of seem out of nowhere and very out of place. However, I really did like Hetty and Reese and their relationship. I also really liked that they had to like reestablish what their relationship was once Byatt was gone and how it changed their dynamic. My radiator made a noise. I don't like that noise. However, I do think that a lot of these issues could be fixed if this book was adapted for a movie or for a TV show. I think that it could definitely be developed a lot more. Again, all in all, very good story, but there's a lot of flaws that I couldn't ignore. My next 3-star read is A Blade So Black, and I gave this 3.5 out of 5. This book is described as what if Buffy fell down the rabbit hole instead of Alice, and the story follows teenage Alice Kingston a year after she becomes a dreamwalker, a human who is able to traverse between the two worlds of our world and Wonderland in order to defeat nightmares, physical manifestations, of our bad dreams. When her mentor is poisoned, she must go across Wonderland in order to find a cure. As you know, love retellings. Oh my god, a retelling of Alice in Wonderland. Peak. And also this cover is fucking beautiful. I love it so fucking much. I had to read this. It was, oh god. There's a lot of showing and telling, so not just telling, which I really appreciated. I really liked most of the characters. I really liked Alice herself. There was a lot of good one-liners. The world building was out of this world, and I would like to know more about the magic system because it was very interesting to me, though, with the things with like poets and verses and how creating these potions and verses affects the poet. I feel like some characters were rounded out a little bit more than others. I was mainly thinking about Court and Chess. I thought that they, compared to everyone else, didn't really have a lot of traits outside of being Alice's friends. And I feel like the first 50 pages were a little bit exposition-y, which I know can be a turnoff for some people. I would have liked to see a little bit more of Wonderland. But I did like that they had a classical YA like cliffhanger setting up for the second book. And I am going to read the second book because, again, just like with I Darken, I hear that it is a lot better. Now we are on to the 4 stars. So my first 4-star read is The Sun Is Also a Star, which is a story of Natasha and Daniel, 2 teenagers in New York City who are going to meet at very important points in their lives. Natasha is trying to keep her family from getting deported, and Daniel's on his way to an interview that might get him into Yale. As they get to know each other throughout the course of the day, they begin to fall in love, and the story is told through changing perspectives. First-person perspective for Natasha and Daniel as they go throughout their day, and third-person perspective for side characters. I really I didn't think I would like this book this much, mainly because it's like, ooh, like tropey YA, but honestly, it was really good. It was really cheesy, it was really sweet, and exactly what I needed. I really liked the changing perspectives. I thought it added a lot of context to things that you normally won't think about, how some innocuous actions at the beginning of the book affected the plot later down the line. But I know that changing perspectives can be very annoying for some readers, especially when it switches from first to third. But I liked it. It was the perfect pick-me-up book for me, and it was a lovely story. It was a flat 4 out of 5. Next, I read Coletta Life Chloe Brown. Brown is a chronically ill woman who has a near-death experience. This prompts her to make a get a life list where she has listed all the things she wants to do in order to, well, get a life. She enlists the help of her building's handyman, Red Morgan, in order to fulfill the list. They butt heads, but there's something more about their relationship. This was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. I typically don't read romance, mainly because I like stories with romance, but I don't like pure romance stories. However, I was trying to read a little bit more because my partner is a little bit more interested in romance than I am, and I wanted to be able to give them recommendations. I was genuinely surprised that I really liked this book, and I really cared for the characters, and I was invested in their relationship. The writing was snappy, the characters were witty. I really liked how Chloe and her sisters interacted. However, I wasn't expecting the sex scenes. I knew it was an adult romance novel. I knew there were steamy scenes. However, I was mentally not prepared. It caught me off guard, but I quickly recovered. And last, but certainly not least, is Cemetery Boys. I would have my copy right here, but I lent it to a friend, and I hope she's enjoying it. Cemetery Boys follows 16-year-old Yadiriel as he attempts a ritual in order to become a brujo. It works, and he accidentally summons the spirit of Julian, the school's bad boy. But there is a catch: he can't seem to sever his spirit's tie to his tether. It's a race against the clock as Yadiriel tries to help Julian fulfill everything he needs to in order to cross to the other side, as well as to not get caught by his family. I feel like you already know how I feel about this book. I always feel like I have to justify my ratings in some way, even if I'm rating them highly. But today I'm going to be incredibly indulgent, because I deserve it. And I absolutely love this book. We all crave to be represented. To have someone look at us and say, I know you, I understand you, and I see you. And this book has done that for me. The closest I've gotten has been reading With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, again, one of my favorite books. But this book really, really got me. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have gotten the gist of something that happened on my campus. I don't want to talk about it because every time I talk about it, I get angry. But after that, I held this story and these characters very close to my heart, and I wore it like an armor and a sign that I deserve to exist in my entirety, unabashedly and unashamed. I love this book. I loved its characters. I loved the plot. I loved the story. I loved the writing. There was nothing about this book that I didn't love. And there's a nice bit of foreshadowing at the beginning, and the ending is a little cheesy, but honestly, after the emotional ringer I was put through, I deserved it. I actually cried real tears, and then I went to get tacos immediately after. So I think I'm the real winner here. I'm going to include a clip of me like my literal reaction to finishing the book now. I finished the book, and I'm super snotty and gross right now because I've been crying. And it's not tears of sadness, it is tears of joy. I have no words. I am going to try to write a coherent review of this book in a little bit. I'm going to go get tacos with some friends. But yeah. For the month of October, I am going to try to focus on reading all the things I have currently checked out of my library. This is less of a TBR and more of a I better fucking read these kind of situation. So I will be reading Sabrina y Corina, which is a collection of short stories written by an indigenous Latina. The Summer of Everything. I don't know really a lot about this plot, but I'm really excited to read it. I actually got it. I borrowed this from a friend who I lent Cemetery Wars to. The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which is written by Kristen Wright, who also wrote I Darken, and The Lovely Lore, which is a historical fiction. There's also a few books from my school library that I really want to read, but I gotta read these first, just because they're going to be due at the end of the month. I hope you're having a good day, and I hope that you remember that you matter to me. And until next time, adios mi gente.